We finally got there, ladies and gentlemen. Probably the best and certainly the biggest modern line of figures released. The Vintage Collection.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel, Mando number 5, and I'm Keith Guppy. So welcome to episode number 28, part 1 of my figure focus line series, where I look at all the modern Star Wars 3 3/4 lines that have been launched since 1995. And yes, this week we finally got here, we finally got to the Vintage Collection. Now, the Vintage Collection is so huge, it's been running since 2010 with a small period of time off before it came back. But it's so big that I'm going to split the TVC videos down to 4. And I'm going to start this week with the vehicles, playsets and beasts of TVC 1. So that goes from 2010 to 2013. So here are all the TVC1 vehicles and beasts that were launched back in 2010, and that went on until 2013. Yeah, there were 17 altogether. I'm missing one, which I'll go into a bit later on. But these were so popular when they were launched. I mean, they were a real throwback on most occasions to the original Star Wars toys released in the 70s and 80s. And as we go through these, I might just pop up some comparison shots of those early vintage boxes or vehicles that you can see, and you can see why these were so attractive to collectors. But anyway, here's a nice shot or two of the whole lot together. Now let's get into a bit of detail about each vehicle. Now I will just add, ladies and gentlemen, I am not an expert on the TVC line. There are many more people who know more about it than I do. So next week I've managed to get some expert help, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's someone who you probably all know. He's got a fantastic channel on YouTube, and I would class him as pretty much a TVC expert. So stay tuned for next week when we go through the figures of the line and I get some much needed help. Just before we have a bit of a detailed look at all the vehicles, please continue to support the channel. I can't thank you enough. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button and chuck me some comments so I can adapt to what you want to see on the channel. So as you've already seen, the Vintage Collection was a classic, really, because what it did, it introduced the look of the old vintage vehicles and figures into the modern era. There were a lot of repacks. I think the Vintage Collection in TVC1 was a little bit lazy. They use a lot of the same molds from previous lines, but with the racetrack and the look of the the vintage look of the line, it was very popular, and it had that classic Vintage Collection logo, obviously, that you've all seen. So let's have a little bit more of a look into some of the vehicles in a bit more detail. And as usual, as we go, we'll look at the value of these vehicles. We won't do a top 5 or top 10 because I think that's going to be pretty obvious, and we'll have a look at 2 of the really impressive grails of the Vintage Collection line. So before we look at the real popular legacy vehicles of the line from the original 3 films, they did actually launch 3 prequel vehicles as well, which is quite surprising at the time. Unfortunately, they've all been produced in other lines previously, so again, this is where I think Hasbro are a little bit lazy. Although, it's worth noting they've all got the Kenner logo on the bottom. So in no particular order, they released the V-19 Torrent Starfighter, which was extensively seen in the Clone Wars animated series on many occasions. So, nothing special about this. I mean, it's not a bad picture. It's got 2 Torrent fighters on the front with an oddball sort of type character inside. With the backdrop of a planet. I'm not sure what the planet is. So that one there, I mean, that would probably cost you about £50, I would suggest, in the current market. And then you've got the all-terrain attack pod from Revenge of the Sith. This box is a little bit more interesting because it's got a little bit more going on. You've got, the Kashyyyk, you've got the troopers, a couple of Wookiees, Commander Gree. So, there's a bit more going on with this vehicle. Again, it's just a reboxed version of a previous one, so nothing too exciting here.
Yeah, so there's the ATAP. Probably for that one, you probably have to spend about £80 to get that now in minting box like this one. And then the last sort of sequels, prequels version you've got was the Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter. Again, not too exciting. It's a shame they didn't do Mace Windu or something like that. But again, the Jedi Starfighter probably about £70 if you want to get it. They didn't produce a yellow one in the background. It was just Obi-Wan's that they produced for the Vintage Collection line. Then thankfully they steered away from a little bit of that, because those of you out there want to just see these boxes that looked very much like the original vintage boxes. So as I showed you earlier on, we've got the Land Speeder, but they were pretty lazy. If you look at this Land Speeder, and then if I show you a 2003 version like this, they're very, very much the same. You've got the same bits and pieces on it. You've got the gun holder on the vehicle, and very, very same. Just really basically a remold and a different paint scheme from a 2003 version. But at least they tried, and at least it looks pretty good. And it's if I put up a picture of the original vintage one, it is still a nice, really nice throwback. The Land Speeder would probably cost you that one there probably cost you about £70 or £80 these days, even maybe a little bit more to get. And then you've got another classic, and I love the Empire Strikes Back stuff in this line, and thankfully there's quite a few pieces, including some terrific attacks that I'll show you later on. But this is Luke Skywalker's Tauntaun. Again, really nice, interesting front on this. Got another picture on the side which has got several Tauntauns, but Luke's was the only one produced. So there you go. But really nice. This one's really minty in a box. So again, this one here would probably cost you about £80 these days to get it mint on eBay. And then a really, really nice Snowspeeder, Rebel Armor Snowspeeder, and again a bit of a pinky purple background is a throwback to one of the releases before. Again, I'll pop up a nice picture for you to compare. But again, it's got some Rebel commandos, Rebel soldiers in the background, Luke. But really, really nice, and one of my preferred pieces of the TVC line. And again, that one there will probably cost you in excess of 130, maybe £140. They're really, really sought after. So now we're into some really, really cool re-releases, some classic vehicles, all using the same molds, which you might think is a bit lazy, but I think that's what we all wanted back then. Something that looked like the vintage collection for a lot lower prices. So here we go. So we got the Scout Walker ATST on the Endor theme with Darth Vader, Wicket, and a Stormtrooper. Really, really nice. That was the Scout Walker was a Kmart exclusive. And now you probably have to spend around about £100, maybe a little bit more for 1 minute in a box like that. So there you have the view on the end. So yeah, so that's really nice. Imperial Fighter. Again, this was a Target exclusive with the Empire Strikes Back logo on it. Again, just a mold from the original release. Nothing too special there. Yeah, but they were looking at some of the the classic sort of styles of the 70s release, with the kind of the 70s type or the late 80s type haircuts, and the kiddies playing with them on the end of the boxes, which was a real throwback and very attractive to people. That one there, these now probably cost you about £130. So these are expensive pieces for modern line collecting. And then we've got a real favourite of mine, the TIE Interceptor. I love the front of this in this red orangey glow, real throwback again to the original vehicle from the early 80s. One of my favourite vehicles. And this is a Amazon exclusive, and there was two Amazon exclusives, I believe. This one and Slave One. They both came in a white mailer box from Amazon, so you did get quite a lot of these. Are in pretty good condition, and this is no exception. Pretty cool. On one side you've got the classic vintage collection logo. You've got the multi-language on all these vehicle boxes, and then you've got the standard language on the front, the classic Return of the Jedi logo on the front as well. But really, really vehicle, one of my favorites. And to get one of these now, you've probably got to pay nearly 150 quid. So, you know, again, not cheap. And these prices are going up and up and up as we get through the bigger vehicles. And then we have the first TVC X-Wing that was brought to us. Now, this was, unusually, this is Big's Red 3 in terms of X-Wings. Now, later on in the TVC2 line, we see a raft of X-Wings, probably 2 or 3, maybe, yeah, 3 more X-Wings at least. So this is the first one. A bit of a boring backdrop, but again, I think they were just trying to make it look like the re-release. The classic Star Wars logo there, really, really nice. But it's a big wing version, so it's not the small original version that we'd see. So, you know, really nice vehicle. And that one there would probably cost you about, I don't know, 100-ish pounds, maybe 120 pounds to get that now as well. So this is where Hasbro really did start excelling themselves. And look at this B-Wing. I mean, this is a classic throwback to the original vintage version. With the classic 2 B-Wings together, the Return of the Jedi logo, and the Death Star exploding in the background. I mean, this is fantastic. So this B-Wing now, especially since they appeared in the end of the Skeleton Crew, probably one of these now is going to cost you about 150, 160 quid, mint in a box, and a sealed, lovely box. But, you know, same mould, so you've got the same features on it. You know, you've got the rotating cockpit, the movable wings. It looks great when it's in flying mode. And this is a Kmart exclusive. As I said, all the vehicles in the TVC one are all exclusives, either Toys R Us, Kmart, Amazon, etc, etc. But yeah, like I said, that's an expensive vehicle, probably about 150, 160 pounds to get these days. And then in a similar size box, and again a real throwback to the original line, is the Y-Wing fighter with, you know, the classic Admiral Akbar, Nien Nunb, General Nadine, all all in the picture. Again, the same mould. Obviously different livery. The original one had yellow bits here. This has got the red bits on it. But a classic vehicle again. All the same bits. You know, you'd have the movable cannons. You've got the torpedo that drops out the bottom. You know, and the opening cockpit. So exactly the same again. And that was a Toys R Us exclusive, the Y-Wing. And then before we move on to the really big boys of the collection, we've got the first Slave 1 in the TVC line with the Empire Strikes Back logo. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, this was reproduced a couple of times in the TVC2 line, which we'll look at in a few weeks' time. So this is the Amazon exclusive, which came in the classic white mailer box again. But again, this is probably about £100. Now, if they hadn't really released it twice, it would probably be upwards £200. But because they have, the original one is not, the value hasn't risen like a lot of the vehicles have as well. But, you know, a fantastic looking ship again with a lovely yellow background. Just taking off from Bespin, but a really classic ship. You've got the carbonite block in there, and you know, really nice piece. Yeah, and you know, one of my favourites again. But yeah, obviously they did this. It was called Slave 1 back now it's just called Boba Fett's ship again, which is a whole nother discussion. I'm delighted to say that Hasbro had the sense to produce the AT-AT again, and I was absolutely delighted when these came out. I said to the wife, I've got to have them, and you know, I was lucky enough to get them for, I think, for Christmas and a birthday back in 2012, I think it was. Both versions, I believe, are Toys R Us exclusives. The AT-AT here you've got is a Return of the Jedi version with the muddy feet, but it's obviously the bigger version. Now this version we first saw in the Dark Skies line, I think in 2010, 2009. So it was a reproduction of that. But look at it, it's in a classic pose with the Endor background, with the Rebel Commandos, speeder bike, couple of Ewoks. What a fantastic looking vehicle in this box. Is absolutely lovely, gorgeous piece. And what they did the classic line art on the back, which again looks absolutely fantastic. Which I'm really glad they did, and that's obviously a throwback again to the original line, and you've got the line art on the top as well. But these vehicles are huge, a much enhanced version of the original Attack. You know, I think you can get three or four characters in the cockpit. You've got kind of a double level here for vehicles, etc., etc. But a really lovely piece, and I think there's also a speeder bike that fits in the back. So a lovely piece. Now, this one here is probably the cheaper of the two. To get this now, mint in a box like this, would probably cost you £350, maybe £400, I suspect. Maybe a little bit more these days. So, you know, very expensive pieces and really sought after. Now, this is probably my favourite TVC1 piece. The Atta all-terrain armour transport from the Hoth battle. What an amazing piece. I love this. I absolutely love this. I think because in 1980 it was probably, or 81, it's probably the first toy I ever had. I mean, it's incredible. Look at all the snow troopers. Again, I put pictures up of the original vehicle because it's great to have a little bit of a comparison. But, you know, you've got the Tauntauns here. You've got all the Hoth soldiers. You've got R2, Leia. And, you know, this is a scene that we all tried to create, you know, when we were youngsters. And I certainly did. And it's a beautiful piece. I just wish they'd maybe done the Imperial attack base, snow base as well, because that would have been absolutely amazing to have both pieces. And the artwork, you've got actually film scenes in the background with the turrets blowing up and stuff like that. So that's really, really nice. Again, like I said, it's Toys R Us exclusive. Some of them have got the little silver Toys R Us logo on. But beautiful, beautiful piece. Another huge piece. And there it is on the back, the classic line art again. And this line art even looks better than the other one because it's got the pink on it. Classic, absolutely gorgeous box. And this one is even more expensive. This one here would probably cost you, well, in condition like this, I would expect you'd have to pay £500. You know, a really, really lovely piece. And there's one more piece I'm going to show you, and then I'll talk about the one that I still need. Yeah, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the BMF, the Vintage Collection BMF. What a gorgeous piece. Very, very hard to get hold of. Toys R Us exclusive. There's the little Toys R Us silver logo I was talking about earlier on. But very, very hard to come by. Don't even know if they sold it in the UK. It might have been just in America. And there was a bit of a story to this one. I was at a toy fair probably 10 years ago. And there was one for sale. And there's no way I was going to take this back to the car. It was just too big. And the guy came from Holland. And he said, well, you know, where do you live? And I said, Yeovil, little old Yeovil in Somerset. And he said, oh, I'm passing through there next week. Which is an unbelievable coincidence. So we met him in a pub, believe it or not, in Yeovil, and I picked it up. I probably paid, don't know, a couple £100 for it back then. Now one of these is going to cost you at least probably £500. They're very hard to get hold of. This is the second BMF they did. Obviously did the Legacy one first of all, which is very popular because of the scale of it. And then later on they produced the Disney one. Disney Parks sort of exclusive one, which I've just got hold of as well. So I might well do a Millennium Falcon comparison video in a few weeks' time. But massive, massive piece, absolutely huge, great throwback again. And again, you've got the classic line art on the back, which is fantastic. So you know, really happy to get this. This has got a few little dents and bumps, but you tell me one that hasn't. I've not actually seen one that hasn't got a few dents and bumps on it, because they're so heavy and so difficult to get. But a beautiful piece, as I said. You know, if you see one that's absolutely mint and you can get it for 500 quid, then go for it, because that's a good deal. And you know, those of you know my grading, I'm a bit of a nutter, and I would love one of these graded. Imagine that in a nice you know, acrylic case where you can keep it absolutely mint. But a fantastic piece. Now, the only piece I haven't got is the Republic gunship, which is very unusual because it's got the turret guns on it, and it comes with the Yoda. I'll put some pictures up now, and that again was a Toys R Us exclusive, but I really can't remember seeing this in the UK. It might again be an American Toys R Us exclusive, but those gunships are also probably worth six, maybe even £700 because they're so rare. The turrets were released in a couple battle packs. I think maybe the blue battle pack and a red battle pack, identical sets, and even they go for 150, 160 quid because they've got those round bore turrets inside them. But really, really hard to get hold of, and I love one of those. Again, they're quite difficult to get in great condition, and I'm quite particular, so I want one in good condition. But that's one of the vehicles that I'm really still after. So that's the vehicles, the creature Tauntaun. Let's have a quick look at the two play sets. We won't go into the Grail figures too much because we'll do that next week. But let's have a quick look at the play sets. So the first multi-pack I want to talk about is this, and this is absolutely gorgeous piece. This is the Carbonite Chamber from the Empire Strikes Back, but with the Lost Line figures included. It's an absolutely gorgeous piece. You get 6 figures with this, and they're lovely. I mean, I'll go in a bit of detail about the card backs next week, but look, you've got the figure, you've got the classic Star Wars logo that was what the card backs in the vintage line could have looked like. And then you've got Princess Leia and a great shot of Millennium Falcon there. Now, I've took several of these out because I think they're so lovely. I've actually got some graded, and I'll go through these in a bit of detail next week. But here's another classic. This is the Wrath of the Emperor with VC-115 Darth Vader inside. And I mean, look at that. Look at the shot of him getting electrocuted. And then you've got a shuttle Tidarium, the Death Star, and a TIE Interceptor. Amazing piece. Even the back of the figures are absolutely lovely. Yeah, really, really nice. And that shows the other ones they can get. So, but the highlight of this one is inside the chamber, and the chamber's hexagonal shape. As you can see, inside there would be Jar Jar Binks in Carbonite, and we'll talk about him a bit more next week. But an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous pack. As you said, I've took out a couple of them to get them graded, but you've got the Jar Jar there, and on every one you've got where it came from in the film. So you've got 6 figures representing every film. So you can probably guess which ones I've got graded. But a lovely, lovely piece. Now to get that now with Jar Jar inside, you're talking at least probably £750, and maybe even more, maybe £800-900 to get this set by itself. But a lovely, lovely piece. And then a year before this piece, at Comic Con 2011, they released probably what I would call the Grail, certainly the Grail of the TVC1 line, and that was the Death Star Revenge of the Jedi set. I've got one, if you post it, I've got one graded, probably the only one that exists, because I'm a bit bonkers like that. But it's an absolute gorgeous piece, and we'll run through the figures in a bit of detail next week. But I'll put some stock photos up of the set. It's an absolute gorgeous set. For those of you who don't know, you've got the Death Star that opens up, folds up. It's a huge piece. And inside you've got 14 figures, 12 sort of standard figures, and then you've got the 2 real big grails, Salacious Crumb and the Mouse Droid. It's an absolutely gorgeous piece. Brilliant. I mean, I've got a picture of what I might put up of me getting it on Christmas Day back in 2012 maybe. But really chuffed. I think retail is probably a couple £100 maybe. But now you can add another 0 to that. To get one now, just in average condition, you're probably talking £2,000. And I know if you send it away to grading and you leave the cards inside the box, inside the fold out Death Star, they can come back as a U grade. So a lot of people do that. But it's an absolutely gorgeous piece, and it's stunning. So so that's all the TVC1 vehicles and playsets for this week. Obviously we'll do the figures next week, but let's have a little look and see the value of just the items that I've shown you today.
So how much have you got to spend to collect the play sets, the vehicles, and that one creature we've got in the TVC line? So let's start with the 2 multi-packs. We've got the Carbon Freezing Chamber, and we've got the Revenge of the Jedi Death Star set. These are massive sets, so popular, got some real grails inside, and we'll look at the grails in a bit of detail next week when we go through the figures. So the carbonite set, the carbon freezing set, whatever you want to call it, to get that, you'd have to spend about £750, probably a bit more these days. And the Jedi, Revenge of the Jedi Death Star playset, which I've got graded, it's a beautiful piece. You'd have to spend probably about £2,000 now to get that, just loose. So those two alone would come to £2,750, which gives you an average of £1,375 for the two. And then moving on to the vehicles, and of the line and the Tauntaun, you'd have to spend £3,150 on those 17 items. That give you an average of £185 and 29p. So that's a very high average in the grand schemes of modern collecting. Probably by far one of the highest averages we've seen for the figure focus line of videos I've been doing. So what does that give you overall? Just for the vehicles and play sets alone, that comes to £5,900, and that's probably slightly reserved in the world we live in at the minute. So it might be just over £6,000 actually. But anyway, that's the vehicles and play sets. Next week we'll go into all the vehicles, and you'll be amazed at the value of those. But until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.